I don't know which was worse. This one damned the alarm clock or the sun shining in my eyes because Steve forgot to lower the curtain again. I looked over my shoulder at him, snoring softly. This man could even sleep through an atomic bomb, and of course his back was turned to the window. I guess I could also turn in that direction, but that would mean sleeping on my right shoulder, which has always been uncomfortable for me. We were having one of our 2 or 3 sex sessions a week as usual, but the old spark just didn't seem to be there. Some of the girls at work were talking about Kelly Brock, the new girl in the accounting department, and how she was always bragging about her lovers. I was stunned. I thought she was married, I said. Oh, that's true, Jane giggled. But she says that after 3 years of dating Paul and 2 years of marriage, she got bored with the same old, and decided to look for one of her old friends. She said the sex was out of this world, even better than she remembered. She thought maybe the illegal nature of it made it more exciting. She claimed that her husband also benefited. Sally intervened. She said she was so hot after being with her lover that she practically attacked her husband when he returned home. Did he mind the sloppy seconds? I asked. Oh, he never found out. I wondered if this could be the solution to my problem, but the thought of cheating on Steve terrified me. I was so horny that I talked Steve into getting into bed before dinner, although it didn't require much talking, and we had one of the best lovemaking sessions we'd had in a long time. When I was bathed in the afterglow, instead of realizing how my own attitude helped us, I began to wonder if just fantasizing about a lover had this effect, how much more would a real lover do? The girls in the office were planning a bachelorette party for this Friday. I didn't usually go, but I thought I'd go. Maybe I'd have a chance to talk to Kelly. When Steve returned home, I nervously started talking about this topic. Steve, the girls get together after work on Friday to get something to eat, and then maybe go have a few drinks, maybe dance a little. Sounds funny, honey. Why don't you go with them? This will do for your benefit, let your hair down, move away from usual worries. I wondered if he would be so willing if he knew what thoughts were running through my head. It's not like I'm planning on going out this Friday or anything, but it might feel like opening the door with one foot. Are you sure, dear? Would you mind if I dance with other guys? You dance with other guys all the time. Why should this bother me now? Well, when you're with me, it's completely different. Honey, I trust you. It's not like you're going to sleep with any of them, he said with a chuckle. Just remember to leave a gap for the Holy Spirit when slow dancing. Okay, Steve, if you're sure about it. I'm sure, baby. Maybe I'll get a few guys together to go to a sports bar and watch a Celtics game. We will drink beer, eat with our fingers, and burp, and no women will correct us. Friday came quickly, and while getting dressed for work, I especially thought about my underwear. Not that I expected anyone to see it, except maybe Stevie when I got home, but I wanted to feel sexy. The drawer contained a simple white Playtex bra and granny panties. I pushed aside my red and black Victoria's Secret thong and pulled out a white lace bra and bikini panties. When I put them on, the silky sensation made me shiver, and I had to shake myself, reminding myself that I wasn't going to cheat on Steve. I also took care of your outfit. Obviously, it had to be business appropriate, but I also wanted to stand out that night. I chose black a leather skirt that was only an inch or so shorter than I usually wore to work, but it had a zipper that I could pull up to show off a little more leg. A sheer button-down blouse and office blazer completed the main look. I didn't expect the blazer to last long once we got there to the club. I wore low-heeled pumps to the office, but I had a pair of 4-inch strappy heels to change into in the car after work. A light spritz of my usual cologne and I was ready to rock and roll. Steve looked at me with an admiring look when I gave him a quick kiss before leaving for work. Now make sure that you behave decently, he said with a grin, not even thinking that I might not do it. When I came to the restaurant, all the girls were delighted. You won't believe who will be at the club today, Jane giggled. Who? Kelly? I asked hopefully. Better, said Sally. Jonathan Richmond. Jonathan was a relatively new addition to our office, and to be honest, I liked him quite a bit. I won't say it was some kind of Greek god or anything like that, but he definitely was nice to watch. He was several years younger than Steve and me, athletic in build, with broad shoulders and narrow hips. He wasn't overly muscular, but He seemed to be in good shape. He was the subject of several fantasies of mine, and I must admit that his image intruded on a couple of my love-making sessions with Steve. I was nervous as a schoolgirl when we arrived at the club, and was relieved and disappointed to find that Jonathan wasn't there. After we had our first drink, I began a quiet conversation with Kelly. I'm a little embarrassed to say this, Kelly, but I've heard rumors that you like, You don't have to beat around the bush, Susan, Kelly said with a laugh. I cheat on Paul sometimes. I was shocked by her frankness. Don't you feel guilty? What if Paul finds out? What if he decides to cheat? Firstly, if I find out that he cheated, he will be in trouble. Yes, that makes me a hypocrite, so sue me. Guilty? Yes, I did feel a little guilty at first, but I was having so much fun that I got over it quickly. Paul has nothing to lose. I give him everything he can handle. Even after my sessions with one of my boy toys, he is exhausted before I am. Honestly, I don't know what I would do if Paul found out. In my fantasies, he saw that my playing time didn't hurt anything and allowed me to continue. You don't really believe in this, do you? I'll be lucky if Steve just kicks me to the curb in a case like this. Well, I don't really believe it. Like I said, this is my dream scenario. Maybe he would forgive me if I vowed to stop, but honestly, I don't think I could. So, I guess we'd have to get a divorce. That doesn't sound like a risk I'd want to take, I said. Well, if you're careful, it's not that big of a risk. I've been doing this for 2 years now, and Paul doesn't suspect a thing. She must have sensed my hesitation. Look, Susan, this isn't for everyone. For me, the thrill of danger and the pleasure of meeting a new lover are worth any risk. Your case may be different. Thanks, Kelly. I think I'll have to think again. She patted my hand. You will do it, she said. And in the meantime, I seem to see a likely prospect. She stood up and headed towards the bar. As she stood up, Jane and Sally came and sat on either side of me. So, Jane said, we saw you talking to Kelly. I think it's safe to guess what you were talking about. I blushed and nodded my head. And, said Sally, well, of course she made it happen. Sound exciting, but it would just kill me if Steve found out and I lost him. On yours place, said Jane. I would be careful. Keep the drinking to a minimum, have fun, tease a few guys, but leave them wanting. You'll probably be a little nervous. Take this energy home and throw it other on Steve. I'm sure he will appreciate it and repay it in full. Deep down, I knew she was right and decided to follow her advice when I went to the club where Jonathan had entered Jonathan and all my resolve just vanished. He noticed us and came to our table. He took our hands and kissed us chastely in turn. Cheeks. May I join you, lady? Please, we all said at once, feeling a little embarrassed with your zeal. He simply smiled, sat down, called the waitress over and ordered a drink. I must have been daydreaming because Sally elbowed me in the ribs and I looked up at stunned Jonathan. Susan, he said apparently for the second time, would you like to dance? I snapped out of my fugue state quickly enough to nod yes, and he took my hand and led on the dance floor. He was a real gentleman, kept his hands to himself and didn't try to get too close. In fact, he backed off when I moved too close. After 2 dances, we returned to the table and he danced a few dances with the rest of the ladies. I danced with some of the other men in the club, but kept coming back to Jonathan. He was the perfect wingman, keeping his distance and making sure we got to our cars safely. My juices were really flowing, and it was a minor miracle that I didn't have an accident on the way home. I was so hot that I took off my clothes on the way to the bedroom. Stevie was already asleep, but luckily for my purposes, he's asleep naked. I pulled back the blanket and carefully turned Stevie onto his back. Stevie soon woke up with a stupid smile on his face. If this is how your bachelorette parties end, maybe you should host them more often, he said, stroking my hair. I'm not complaining, he said, but what led to this? It was almost the best sex I've had in a long time. I didn't want to tell him the truth, that it was the attention I received at the club, especially from Jonathan, that turned me on so much. I did the only thing I could. I lied. I'm so grateful to you for trusting me enough to let me have this evening that I wanted to make it special for you too. God, I felt like such a hypocrite. I thanked him for his trust when I almost betrayed that trust. Despite my confusion, I fell asleep pretty quickly, only to wake up again with that damn sun in my eyes. I looked at Steve, who was snoring quietly with a blissful smile on his face. I briefly thought about waking him up with a morning blowjob, but thought that might be a little unnecessary. Instead, I took a quick shower and went to the kitchen to make Steve a nice breakfast. Cooking bacon woke him up, and he came into the kitchen completely naked, a habit that I had been trying to break him from until now without success. "Steve, go wash and get dressed. Breakfast will be ready in 5 minutes." He stretched out his arms and looked at his body. "What? You don't like my body?" "Apparently you fooled me last night." I threw a kitchen towel at him. "Last night was last night. Right now you stink. At least while you wash your face, you can take a shower after breakfast." He smiled slightly at me. "Your wish is an order," he said, giving me a wide bow before turning and leaving, twitching with your cute ass in front of me. I asked myself why I couldn't be satisfied with what I had. I thought there was something wrong with me, that maybe I should see a psychologist or something like that. I dismissed it out of hand. Steve, of course, will be concerned and will want to know why I need counseling. The next week passed without incident. There were no snarky comments about Friday night. Jonathan led himself as usual, was friendly, without any hints in conversations. Our personal life was no different from normal, although I think I would rate it a little above average. On Friday morning, Steve asked if I would go out with the girls again. "Probably not," I said. "I think we'd rather spend the evening. Together, maybe we'll find something good to watch on Netflix." Steve looked slightly disappointed. "Fine, if that's what you want. Although I'd be looking forward to you coming home after the bachelorette party." "Don't worry, honey. I don't think you'll be disappointed," I said. He raised an eyebrow as I quickly kissed him and headed for the door. The girls were disappointed that I wouldn't be joining them, but I told them I had a special evening planned with Steve. They gave me looks ranging from puzzled to understanding, and then left to go about their business. I left work a little early to prepare a special dinner, and got home just in time for dinner to be ready shortly after Steve returned. Right on schedule, I heard Steve's car pull up to the house. Peeking out from the kitchen, I saw Steve sniffing the aromas wafting from the kitchen. Something definitely smells good," he said. "For what occasion?" "No reason. I just wanted to cook a special dinner for my special husband." "Special husband? Does this mean that there is some ordinary husband? Which should I worry about?" "No, silly. You are my only husband. But you are special to me. So I wanted to do something special for you." "You already did something special for me last Friday," he said, looking at me slyly. "God, sex is all you think about? There's more to life than just sex." Steve looked around, confused. "Eat? Where?" I just shook my head. "Come on, help me carry out the food, and then tell me about your day." We ate well, and Steve complimented me on my cooking. "Since you've already cooked, I'll clean it up." "No," I said. "This food was my gift to you." We ended up putting away the dishes together. It was something we did before, laughing and splashing each other. Sometimes the dishes would sit while our play became more sexual. When did we lose this joy, this spontaneity? We were heading into the living room for our usual Netflix night when Steve touched my arm. "Why don't we go to the bedroom?" I nodded eagerly, took his hand, and followed him into our bedroom. As I reached up to unbutton my blouse, Steve put his arm around me and pressed his lips to mine. Soon we were kissing passionately, our tongues battling as we stroked each other's backs. I was slightly disappointed when Steve pulled away, but it was only so he could unbutton my blouse himself. He was agonizingly slow as he placed feather-light kisses, first on my neck, then further down to my cleavage. I reached to pull my blouse out of my skirt, unbuttoning it at the bottom until our hands met, and Steve pulled it off my shoulders and let it fall to the floor. My bra followed to the floor shortly after Steve kissed the valley between my breasts. As my skirt fell to the floor to join my blouse and bra, I ripped Steve's shirt off, buttons flying in all directions. He grabbed my hands as I reached for his belt. "No," he said. "Last week it was for me. Today it is for you." I didn't resist when he picked me up and laid me across the bed. My legs hung down from the edge. I wanted to shout at him to hurry up. The rest of the weekend went more or less normally, although Steve and I exchanged a lot of goofy smiles. On Monday morning, Jane and Sally joined me for coffee. "We missed you Friday night," Jane said. "So is Jonathan," Sally said. Jane nudged her. "What did you do that was more important than having fun with us?" asked Sally. "I was so grateful to Steve for letting me go last Friday that I cooked him a special dinner. Then he thanked me for dinner." "All evening," I said, giggling. They hit my hand. "Great girl," said Sally. "Will you come this Friday?" "I think yes. I do not know. Maybe. I need to consult Steve." "Are you 16 and you have to ask your dad for permission to go on a date?" asked Sally. "This is wrong. It's just common courtesy. Steve wouldn't come out without consulting me either." "It doesn't matter," she said, and she and Jane headed back to the office. I still hadn't made up my mind when Steve and I sat down for dinner Thursday night. "So, are you going out tomorrow night?" he asked. "I'm not sure. I think you better go," he interrupted. "Why do you want me to go so badly? Do you have a hot date yourself?" "No," he said, laughing. "It's just that you almost never do anything for yourself. I think it will do you good. I know it was good for me, too." I hit him with the newspaper when he gave me a nasty look. Okay, I'll go, but I don't guarantee a repeat of last time." He faked a pout and then said, "It's okay, honey, as long as you're having fun, I'll be happy." After watching TV, we went to bed to make tender love. I fell asleep wondering what tomorrow would bring. On Friday morning, during a coffee break, I was joined again by Sally and Jane. "So," Sally said, "is Dad canceling your curfew tonight?" She was really starting to piss me off. "Could you please stop this? I want you to know that it was Steve who talked me into going." "He probably has his own plans," she said, grinning. "Why are you trying to create problems? I thought you were my friend." "Sorry, Susan, I was just teasing you." "You're just so lucky. Many husbands don't understand everything that way." "See you at Regina's after work?" "I'll be there," I said, standing up to go back to my desk, wiping my sweaty palms on my skirt. I was surprised to see Kelly with Sally and Jane. "Sorry, but I won't be able to join you girls at the club tonight," she said. "I have a date today." "Girl," said Jane, "you understand that you are playing with fire, don't you?" "Yes," I said. "What will you do if you ever get caught?" "Paul hasn't caught me in 2 years. He's just too distracted." "Yes," said Jane. "That's exactly what Joyce from the payroll department said." "Joyce?" I'm at a loss. "I don't think I know her." "Oh, that's right," said Sally. "She left before you joined the company. She had an affair with her boss. Her husband found out about this and beat the crap out of the guy. He had to serve 30 days in prison, and then he simply left in an unknown direction. Joyce couldn't even divorce him for a year, so she lost their house because she couldn't pay the mortgage. Her boss lost his job and his family. Joyce eventually returned to her hometown to live with her mother. I had to remind myself to close my mouth, which was open in shock. "She was just stupid," Kelly said. "First of all, you don't shit where you eat. Secondly, she had an affair. I rarely play with the same guy more than 2 or 3 times. There are too many emotional issues when you're having an affair, and you may get too comfortable and make mistakes. This will never happen to me." "Famous last words," Jane laughed. With this drama over with, we headed into the club to find that Jonathan had already reserved a table for us. As soon as he saw us, he ordered a drink, and I didn't know if I should be impressed that he remembered my drink from 2 weeks ago. I decided to put this tidbit aside while awaiting additional data. I was a little disappointed that I wasn't Jonathan's first partner, but I didn't have to wait long before I found myself on the dance floor. Jonathan was again a gentleman, although a couple of times our dance moves brought us closer together, and I felt nervous as we parted. When I returned home, we didn't have a repeat of the first time. Not that I wasn't just as excited, in fact, I needed a shower before I went to bed. However, I didn't want to get into a situation where each of us owes something to the other. As I slid into bed, Steve surprised me a little by rolling over onto his left side to snuggle up against me. His right arm crossed over me so he could cup my breast. I fell asleep with warm, fuzzy feelings of love. I was beginning to think that there might be something in Jane and Sally talking about this to spice up our love life. On Friday night, I had some innocent fun with the girls, and Steve and I had more sex and, dare I say, better sex. Over the next few weeks, everything went as usual, without any major changes until I hit a bump in the road. We had been in the club for about an hour when Jonathan and I returned to the table. He put his hand on the small of my back, leading me through the crowd. His hand slid down, and he cupped my ass. Well, we've had a lot of casual contact, but in the past he quickly cleaned up hand and apologized profusely. This time he didn't remove his hand. He even lightly squeezed my ass. He nearly ran me over when I suddenly stopped and turned around, a stupid grin on his face until he saw the angry look on my face and my hand about to hit him. I have to admit, I wasn't sure if I was more angry at him or at myself for getting my panties wet when he squeezed my ass. "Wow," he said, stepping back and raising his hands. "Sorry, Susan. I didn't mean anything by it. I guess I just got carried away." "Well, why don't you just take yourself to another table and leave me alone?" I said angrily, turning and heading towards my table. I wasn't looking, but Jonathan apparently took my advice because he was nowhere to be seen when I sat down. "Trouble in paradise?" Kelly asked. What are you talking about?" "You and Jonathan were so hot and heavy that we were starting to think we might have to get a room for you." I could only look at her in disbelief. "Look, I admit I have a little crush on Jonathan, but that's all. I love Steve and would never do anything to jeopardize our marriage." "Well, that's what you say. Just keep repeating it to yourself. Maybe eventually you'll even believe it yourself." I had enough. I threw a 20 on the table, walked out and returned home. "You returned home early today? Are you feeling well?" "Physically, yes, but one of the guys went a little overboard and I just had to get out of there." "Who is this guy? Do you want me to teach him a lesson?" "I don't know why, but I didn't want Steve to know that Jonathan was working with me." "I don't know him. He was just a guy. I don't think I'll have any problems if he shows up again. If he does this next week, I'll slap him." Steve just smiled. "I believe that is exactly what you will do. Do you want to go to bed or sit for a while in a secluded corner?" "Sorry, Steve, I'm a little tired. How about I take a shower and we just cuddle?" "Of course, dear. Everything you need. Can I get you something?" "No, thanks, I'm fine." And I headed to the bathroom to take a shower. When I went to bed, Stevie was in his pajamas. He usually sleeps naked, so I knew it was his way of saying there wouldn't be any mischief on his part. I really appreciated the thought and kissed him, which would normally be a prelude to hot sex. I climbed into bed and snuggled against Steve's body. He hugged me, but put his hand on my stomach, not my chest. I took his hand and pressed it to my chest until I fell asleep. For a change, Steve got up first and prepared the blessed coffee and breakfast for me. Steve is competent in the kitchen, but I made sure he knew how much I appreciated it. On Monday morning, Jonathan was all apologetic. "Susan, I'm so sorry. I don't know what came over me." "Jonathan, just give it up. It's over," I said, and left. I think the whole office felt the chill. Jonathan didn't show up that Friday night, much to the other girls' disappointment, and I didn't get to do much slow dancing. I danced with some new guys, but soon I was limited to fast dancing. "Girlfriend, you know exactly how to ruin an evening," Kelly said. I was in a very bad mood. "Look, just because you like to act like a cheater doesn't mean we all do. Or maybe you're not just playing. If looks could kill, I would already be dead. Anyway, I was surprised she didn't throw her drink at me before leaving." "Don't hold back," said Jane. "Express your true feelings." "Sorry, girls, I really didn't want to leave like that. To be honest, I felt guilty because I felt a little slutty myself," I said, slightly burst into tears. "It's okay, Susan," said Sally. "We all have bad evenings." "Thank you," I said. "But I think that's enough for today." Luckily, Steve was asleep, so I didn't have to explain why I came home so early. I undressed, slid into bed, and snuggled up against Steve's back. The following Friday night, I didn't feel like answering Steve's questions, so I joined the girls for dinner. "If you go to a club," Jane said, "do you think you can resist cutting off guys' knees?" "Come on, Jane," said Sally. "It wasn't that bad." "No? I was probably only asked to dance half as much as usual." Okay, I said, sipping my second glass of wine. "I'll be fine." Only when we had drunk the second round did someone dare to come up to us and invite us. Jonathan entered but walked around us. After the third drink, I walked up and asked him to dance. He hesitated, but gave in when I took his hand and lifted him up. Our dancing was quite chaste, and I could tell Jonathan was nervous. "Listen, John, I'm sorry I snapped at you, but you have to understand, I'm a happily married woman. I'm just looking for a little fun, not a lover at all." Jonathan had the good sense to blush. "I'm so sorry, Susan. I'm not the kind of guy who goes after married women, but you're very attractive, and Kelly seemed to think you were ready to get a little naughty." I was stunned. What did she say? I practically dragged him back to my desk, where Kelly had a very smug look on her face. "Kelly, what did you tell Jonathan about me?" She still had that stupid grin on her face. "I just told him that you were in love with him and might be interested in some extracurricular activities." I had to hold back. "This is exactly the opposite of what I told you." "Come on." Everyone saw how excited you were. "Yes, I was excited. This doesn't mean my brain was turned off. I took this turned-on feeling home and shared it with my husband. You know, the guy I vowed to leave everyone else with? You might want to try this someday." This time she threw her drink in my face and ran away. Jane handed me a napkin and I dried myself as best I could. "I think it's time for me to go home," I said, sniffling. "Are you okay to drive?" asked Sally. "I'm not sure," I said, thinking about the 5 glasses I'd drunk. "I'll take you home in your car," she said. "Jane can follow us to take me back." "Thanks, Sally. I think it's probably for the best." I was silent the whole way home and barely pulled myself together when we arrived at my house. "Are you okay?" asked Sally. "Do you want me to go with you?" No, I think this is something I have to do myself." "Okay, just remember, we're just a phone call away," she said, handing me the keys before getting out and getting into Jane's car. They sat for a few minutes before driving away, and I pulled myself together before heading over to Steve. I was alarmed. I wanted to be honest, but I also wanted to save my marriage. Can I tell the truth? Or maybe not the whole truth? I still hadn't decided when I walked in. I'll see how Steve reacts before I spill the beans. Steve looked up as I entered. "You're back early, honey. Everything's fine." He hesitated when he saw the expression on my face. "Steve, I need to talk to you about something." Steve had a pained expression on his face as he stood up from his chair, motioning for me to join him on the couch. He sat on one end, but I sat in the middle, taking his hands in mine. "Steve, I haven't been completely honest with you lately." He visibly tensed and tried to free his hands, but I held him tightly. "Not entirely fair," he remarked sarcastically. "And what does it mean? Did you cheat on me? Maybe I shouldn't have done it, but I was shocked by it." "No, I didn't cheat. Not really." This made him pull his hands away and jump up from his seat. "How the hell did you not really cheat? What?" No. We didn't have sex, but some of my actions wouldn't pass the husband test." "What is a test for a husband?" "I did things I wouldn't do in your presence." "What did you do that you don't think you would have done in front of me?" "Nothing that bad." Steve's face turned red. "Let me decide how bad it was, okay?" I nodded, my eyes filling with tears. "I never even kissed him," I said. "Wait a minute. He? Who is he?" I was afraid to tell him about my relationship with Jonathan. "It doesn't really matter. It could have been anyone." "I'll leave it alone for now," Steve said, "but I reserve the right to come back to it." "Maybe I should start from the beginning," I said. Steve just looked at me, crossing his arms over his chest. "There is one woman at work. She's, well, a little wild." "Are you saying she's a slut?" "I think you can say that. She told us about how much fun she had and how it really spiced up her sex life with her husband. Stop, stop, stop. She is married? Please continue. Well, I thought things were getting a little awkward in the bedroom. This is certainly news to me. I thought you could fill me in on this. Now my tears flowed freely. I know, and I pray to God that it will be so. I guess I just thought it was normal after being married for a while and thought maybe I could find a spark that would help us. That's why I started going to bachelorette parties. I think you remember that it was quite hot that first night. Oh, so that blowjob wasn't really a thank you, but rather because this other guy turned you on? I had to nod affirmatively. So, why didn't you go next week? Guilt? I could only nod again. So why are you telling me all this? I have to admit, I liked how hot it became our sex since you started spending your evenings there. I took a deep breath. Everything was pretty normal for a while. There was some casual contact, nothing that couldn't be explained by a crowded dance floor, but then there was the time he squeezed my ass. I'm guessing it was an evening when someone got a little drunk? Yes, I said, looking at the floor. When was it? Why are we only having this conversation now? I guess I was unconsciously giving signals that I could be open to more. At first I was angry that someone thought I might be cheating on you, then I felt ashamed that it could be true. Steve, I don't want to be that kind of woman. I love you. And the thought of risking losing what we have scares the living daylights out of me. If you can find it in your heart to forgive me for what I did, for what I was close to, I want to work with you to make our marriage stronger than ever. I don't want more girls' nights. I want more of our nights. Steve sank heavily onto the sofa, clasping his head in his hands. You've put such a burden on me, Susan. I don't know whether to thank you for never letting things go too far, or to be angry that they even happened, and that you never came to me with your problems. Right now, I'm leaning towards accepting the story and appreciating your honesty in opening up to me before I hear anything from anyone else, but I think I'll sleep in the guest room for now. My tears stopped, but I was still sniffling. I understand, Steve. I'll leave you alone. Oh, one more thing, Steve said. Maybe we should get a consultant for us. Yes, Steve, that sounds like a good idea. I'll start searching tomorrow. Steve simply nodded, stood up, and slowly walked towards our guest room. I breathed a sigh of relief when I saw the bullet I had hoped I had dodged, and then walked into our bedroom. Despite my fatigue, I tossed and turned for a while before falling asleep. We did meet with the consultant, both together and separately. It helped that Steve believed I wasn't actually cheating, but when it turned out Jonathan and Kelly were working with me, he insisted I change jobs. At first I was a little reluctant. I loved my job and the people I worked with, but I couldn't deny his logic. And even the consultant agreed with him. Another positive that came out of this situation is that we learned to really talk to each other. We also learned that our sex life doesn't have to freeze, and that we don't need anyone but ourselves to give it the spark. It's been 2 years since we stopped seeing a counselor, although we have the phone number on speed dial just in case. Subscribe to our channel so that your second chaff doesn't cheat on you, and go ahead and listen to the next story, because this story is nothing compared to the next one. If you're under 18, don't even think about listening to the next one.